Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Adesso. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's some lecture on the energy sector by Dankule. Quite incisive, if you ask me. I was listening all through. Now, let's start with these day newspapers as usual. Tension grips Abuja. Many feared killed in Shiites army clash. It's also in a number of other Nigerian newspapers. Vanguard, lead story, Vanguard, death, blood as Shiite soldiers clash in Abuja. Fleeing old woman hits head on median, dies. More feared dead, others injured in Abuja. Motorists, residents scamper for safety. Army, police, Shiites react. Then the Daily Sun scores feared killed in fresh Shiite army clash. That's the Daily Sun. Several others injured, vehicles destroyed. Then the Guardian newspaper, Nigeria's The Guardian, Shiites allegedly killed in clash with soldiers. I question this, they are allegedly killed, because in the front page of that Guardian you have photographs of the dead being carried by members of the Shiite group. Now, you discussed this extensively not a short while ago, but this incessant clash between soldiers and the Shiites. Recall that before the arrest of al-Zaki, the leader of the Shiites, it was a clash with the soldiers where they claimed the Shiites were blocking the pathway for the chief of army staff, and then they seemed to have no choice but to open fire, where they killed several of those Shiite members. And since that time, with the incarceration of al-Zaki, despite court orders that he should be released, this back and forth between the security agencies, particularly the soldiers and the Shiites, only on Saturday, also, the Shiites were having one of their religious rites where they were marching. And again, soldiers were coming and they were carrying ammunition to a particular depot. And again, a clash with soldiers. So there seemed to be something between the soldiers and the Shiites, and the way lives are cut down. No one held responsible.
Well, I mean, I commented on this earlier, so at the risk of sounding repetitive, I would like to just say that, you know, it's condemnable. But the additional point that I would like to raise is that why do we have, on a more frequent, regular basis, the Nigerian government using the military for police work? Because if there is a demonstration, if there is a protest, the right to protest is guaranteed under the Constitution. And I think in this case, you know, clearly the Shiites have a legitimate right to protest. If it's just a demonstration, a protest, they were not armed. We have not been convinced that they did anything out of place. And then you deploy soldiers to confront them. Somebody told me something many years back to say that, look, soldiers are not trained to maim or to dissuade. That soldiers are trained to kill.
True.
That it's policemen who do riot police work, who prevent breakdown of law and order. Once you deploy a soldier's training requires him to account for the bullet that goes out of his gun. When he shoots, he wants to count body bags. He wants to account for the number of bullets, and he's not trained to shoot and miss. It's only policemen who do civil, peace and other work. So I think we have to interrogate this a bit more deeply,
yes,
and to ask questions about the abuse of the military in terms of their deployment for just routine work that can be handled by civil defense and police.
Yes,
okay?
Because
now they said the military authorities said the Shiites were carrying arms and ammunition. That also has to be investigated. They said they stoned soldiers. Okay, if they stoned soldiers, the response is to kill them. Defenseless persons who are trying to make a statement about the victimization of their group, who are trying to defend their freedom of thought, and who are asking for the release of their leader, who have been incarcerated against court ruling.
Yes.
So these are many of the contradictions, and this happens routinely. It seems to have become, the new order, the new normal, in the Nigeria in which we now live in.
If you must disperse crowd protesting in a rally, whatever, there are best practices worldwide. You use tear gas to disperse them. If that fails, you use water cannon, or you use rubber bullets. These are best practices in civilized, let me say, saner climes. You don't just open fire on people protesting and you kill them. Perhaps the last time this happened in the continent of Africa consistently was in South Africa during the apartheid regime, where the apartheid regime just opened fire on innocent black citizens protesting against apartheid. I think this government must do what is right and proper.
The army spokesperson was talking about rules of engagement. Nigeria, to the best of our knowledge, is not at war. And a protest is not an act of war.
Yes.
So it's only in a war situation that you can say that when there is aggression against soldiers, then soldiers have a duty to resort to the option of live ammunition.
Yes.
But in this particular case, I don't think the Shiite movement in Nigeria can be accused of having declared war against the Nigerian state.
Yes, and we must question whoever deployed the soldiers. Because before you deploy soldiers, there must be clear indications that the situation at hand has gone beyond the regular police, the mobile police, before you bring in soldiers for internal security duties. So we need to also question who deployed these soldiers. Is it the commander-in-chief of the armed forces or the chief of army staff?
Well, the report said, the army spokesman said, one of the reports indicated that they were acting on orders from above. So, which is why your point is relevant.
Correct.
Who gave that order from above that the Shiites should be killed because they decided to stage a protest? And this is not the first time that the Nigerian state has turned the bullets on them. So, turned guns on them. So this again raises issues about human rights, and fundamental human rights.
And the numbers of needless deaths we continue to amount and amass in the country is just disheartening. I think it's very avoidable, and we need to stop it.
Yeah.
It needs to stop.
Okay, let's look at Vanguard other stories. Federal government, governors divided over figure. Governors meet to brief economic management team. The meeting that started yesterday will continue today. The governors holding emergency meeting, the economic management team, with a view to averting perhaps what would be a nationwide strike, how they can strike a balance and agree with labor on what should be the national minimum wage is now the issue at hand. But in all these meetings they're holding, labor is strategizing somewhere. So they need to also agree and meet with labor with a view to finding a common ground. Perhaps labor will also be willing and ready to shift ground, no matter how slight. Because when you are negotiating, you don't stay in one position. You must move. But I think they have to hurry up a little bit with all those back and forth between governors. We are willing, but we don't have the capacity. Perhaps they have to...
We took that subject earlier. We discussed it earlier.
Yes. Now, let's look at other papers. 189 died in that's Punch newspaper, apart from the governors holding emergency meeting today over minimum wage. That's the Punch. There is the photographs and of the Indonesian plane crash. 189 die as Indonesian plane crash into sea. Indonesia again. You talked about that much earlier. Then the Nation newspaper, Buhari, vote fraud era gone. Yes, making that statement that the era where people rig elections is over in Nigeria. Sound like good music to the ears of many. And I hope all parties will know that the era of rigging is coming to an end. Perhaps is
by merely saying so, or by taking appropriate steps to ensure.
If there's anybody that should declare that, I think it should be INEC and tell, like they were trying to tell us, the measures. The spokesman of INEC was on this seat yesterday in Abuja, telling us measures they have put in place to ensure that rigging will be a thing of the past, saying that, in fact, it is not possible for any one person within the INEC hierarchy to rig elections for anybody. So let's hope that they have put in enough measures to ensure that rigging is indeed a thing of the past.
Perhaps the president was reassuring that the power of incumbency just doesn't mean anything ulterior beyond the power of incumbency. And he said that when he was receiving the leader of Canada yesterday in the country. We wait to see how, if his word is actually his bond as we go into the elections next year.
Yes. I hope nobody should rig for the president. Nobody should attempt to rig for the opposition party. And all the parties should also try and comply with the sentiment that there should be no rigging. Because in the past, we used to say that in this country, that when one party cries of rigging, it is because they have been out-rigged.
Well, but I mean, President Buhari, I guess, you know, was not speaking just as somebody in the race, as a presidential candidate. He's president of Nigeria. And the point needs to be made that it's important that he realizes that what happens in terms of the elections under his watch will be part of his legacy, not just for Nigerians, but also the international community. I think he must resolve and ensure that the same position is taken by other stakeholders, including his party, including the INEC, including the coercive instruments of state that are in his possession, to ensure that the elections in 2019 are free, fair, credible, and that it will be said, you know, in the future that he presided over, you know, an electoral process that had integrity. Anything otherwise will be a minus for his administration.
Okay. Daily Independent. Buhari to meet APC governors over party crisis. Amosun's defection. Oshomole's fate top on agenda. Party exploring avenues for reconciliation, according to Ogala. Now, the APC crisis still very much in the front burner for the party because, as it stands, a number of stakeholders may have to consider their options if they don't get what they expect within the reconciliation process after all the hue and cry about how the primaries were conducted, how procedures were not followed, how there's this high-handedness on the part of the party chairman, Adams Oshomole. So all this coalescing together is a big problem within the APC. But let's hope President Buhari, whose chances will be affected if this kind of crisis and divisions continue within the party, is now wading into the matter, calling the governors and party leaders to a crisis meeting. Let's move on to the foreign newspapers. And in the UK, of course, the budget presented by Philip Hammond is dominating all the major newspapers in the UK. The Times, let's just take the headlines before we talk about the story. The Times of UK. Hammond's giveaway gamble. That's how the Times. Then The Guardian delivered a budget to shore up May. That's Theresa May. The Daily Telegraph. Taxpayer handed Brexit bonus. Then the Financial Times. Hammond's giveaway clouded by Brexit. Top on that is the tax cut that is coming for over 32 million Britons will benefit from that tax cut in the budget. Then the spending spree, 100 billion pounds spending spree in defense. Also, monies have been allocated to fix potholes. I was particularly interested in that as part of the spending spree, and is considered the biggest spending spree in the UK since 2010. And Hammond declared that as the end of austerity.
Well, I mean, he's been taken up on that, and the House of Commons today will submit the budget proposal to closer scrutiny. Commentators have said, look, this would not necessarily end austerity. Two, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's plan to balance the books by 2019 may not be feasible. And three, the Daily Mirror was even very skeptical. The Daily Mirror on its front page says this is a con job, and this is an attempt to just swindle the people ahead of Brexit. However, the biggest criticism is that the government is proposing to favor rich people, you know, that the 32 million persons that you mentioned, that in fact the tax cut will favor the rich and further marginalize the poor. And, you know, in that regard, that's why they're saying it's a con job. Even the leader of the Labour Party has condemned it to say this is an attempt to intrigue people over the Brexit deal. But we'll see how it works out, because at the end of the day, government is also trying to raise its revenue. The tech giants, Google, Facebook, they're going to be slammed with a levy of about £400 million, you know, per annum. But the bigger challenge that they face, you know, in the UK, of course, remains Brexit and how to negotiate the future for the United Kingdom.
Yes. If we just round up with the Wall Street Journal, where the lead story is Merkel set exit in motion. Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor.
Well, she probably has no option in the
one of the most powerful women in world politics. Has one song been written by herself after that defeat in...
you know, she's been having issues with immigration.
Yes.
In the northern part of Germany. And her party and the coalition, the partner, the CSU, lost election in Bavaria, where they had been in charge for almost 100 years. So the society itself is reacting. Angela Merkel herself is held responsible for her pro-immigration policies. But she has had a good run. I think that she's taken a decision to leave when the ovation is loudest. She will give up her chairmanship of the party, the Social Democratic Union, and then subsequently she says she will not seek another term in office. But I think she will be remembered positively by history.
Yeah.
Many thanks, Emmanuel Efeni. That's where we call it a wrap on the headlines review this morning. It's time now for a short break.